Hello, everyone, and welcome to a new edition of Local Café, episode 85. Today, we'll be covering a lot about 120, some new capabilities, lots of changes overall. We transitioned to Bootstrap 5, lots of changes related to data and pickers, and many others that we'll demo today. But before that, let me introduce myself. My name is Bogdan Litescu. I'm the founder and CEO of Plant an App. And this event, for those that are new today with us, this event is something that we do every week, every Wednesday at the same time, and we call it Low Code Café. It's a community event. We get together to showcase interesting techniques, new features. The largest part of this webinar is usually the hands-on session where we build a system, where we show how to achieve a special scenario. This webinar is being recorded, so all past editions are on our YouTube channel. Lots of very good training content in there, so make sure to visit and subscribe to stay up to date with everything that's happening so fast in the low-code world. So the agenda for today is I will give you a brief update about the roadmap and the current release, and then we'll hear stories from the trenches covering a lot of the date and time picker transformation. And finally, we'll continue with demoing other new things in 120. Engage with us in any way available to you, so the chat, the Q&A window. There's also a feedback form that is available. So make sure to ask your questions. We'll answer them as soon as we see them in the chat. Cool. So just to give you a brief update, we initially announced that the beta will go out today for 120, but we are pushing until Friday. We uncovered a lot of issues that we have to address before opening the door to find other issues with the community. So the new plan for the beta is to release it on Friday, and we also push the release date by 1 week. So around 6th of April is when we aim to get 120 officially out. There's of course the main reason. It's a lot of changes, so we revamped all the UI to Bootstrap 5. We uncovered a lot of ramifications during our Q&A phase, and I'm sure that once we get it in the hands of the community, we'll find more scenarios out there to make sure that we covered all of them. Great. So I would like to bring it to Dale, our head of support, to give us the story from the trenches.
Great, good morning. Let's see if I can get this shared out here. Perfect. All right, let's start at the start. We previously, on our version 119, previously released 8 hotfixes, and there's nothing new this week, so which is just really an indication that we're focusing heavily on our next release, 120. And I guess that 119 has been stable. Very few things are new, except in the area of the Bootstrap 5, so that's good. Today, from the trenches segment, I'm going to talk about date and time fields. There's been a lot of effort, a lot of discussion, a lot of work put into doing date and time better for you, so that as you're working with it, you have to think about it less. And so I'm going to demonstrate today. We'll build a simple appointment form and focus in on what's going on both on the screen, and then some of the stuff that's going on behind the scenes. But really just the main point that I want you to take away from it is that it is much easier to work with it, whether you're talking about with our entity model or if you're using SQL. So in order to dive into that, there's some key concepts I just wanted to talk about. there's really, when you're talking about date and time, and by the way, we'll get some into, this release also includes the idea that we have dates and times as separate entities, separate properties of the entity. And so date, if you're only tracking date or times, those are simpler topics, and we'll take them up at another time. But the tough one is date and time combined. And so we get into date and time pickers and date and time in the database. So some key concepts, there's dates can be stored or expressed with or without time zone offset information. So UTC is without, Universal Coordinated Time is without any indication of where that time applies. And so you get, it looks something like this. A date includes a year, month, day, and a time. And the time I'm happen to show as an example here is the time of this webinar. And so here in Universal Coordinated Time, this is at 1500. In my local time zone in ISO with time zone information, it occurs at 10 o'clock, and then the time offset is -5 hours from Universal Coordinated Time. So this helps explain that it happened for me, that this event is scheduled at 10 a.m. Central Time, and so this expresses that 10 a.m. Central Time. If you were looking at this event somewhere else in the world, it would be this 10 a.m. Central Time could be expressed to you in your local time zone, but it also retains the time zone of when it happened initially. So that's a key concept, UTC versus ISO. The next one, we have data types. When we define entities, you can choose a date and time data type for a property of an entity, and that is in UTC time. So it doesn't have the time zone of when something happens. It's just expressed in this Universal Coordinated Time. Our date and time local includes ISO. It includes the locale of where this date is intended to go. So we're going to be exploring both of those today, date and time local. So additional key concepts, another one is browser time, which is the time is based on the time of your device. Typically, if you're on, for example, on a Windows PC and you set that you are in Central Time, United States, that impacts how time is displayed both on your time in your operating system, but then when you go into the browser, that's what time you're in as well. And so that impacts on input. It controls how time is perceived by our system. When you input a time, we're going to record it in your time zone. And when you put it for output, if we're displaying it in user time, it's going to control how that time is output to you. So just realize that your browser time and your time zone setups probably will impact what you'll see. And for example, when we get into building this thing, if you were to look at the information from a different time zone, you'll see different times than what I am displaying. We're going to be talking particularly in terms of our forms, we're going to be talking about the date and time picker. This is a new control, a new field type that we've added to replace the obsolete date and time picker. And so when you adopt Bootstrap 5, this is the date and time picker that's available to you. And it is hands down much simpler than anything we've put out before. And then when you get into listings, there's an option to convert. Whether you convert either of those, when you record a date and time field, how is it going to be displayed? Is it going to be displayed in user time, which is our default? It's the most common use case. It could be displayed in portal time, meaning when you define the DNN instance, you can configure it to say that the server is in, or rather the portal is in Central Time US, or it's in, for example, Romanian time zone, wherever you have your whatever you consider to be your portal time. So you could display things in portal time. You can also display it unconverted, which will then end up being UTC. So those are the key concepts that we're going to be touching on today. And here's what we're going to do. We are going to create a new entity. It's going to be called an appointment, for an LCC 85 appointment. It's going to have a few properties: the name, the appointment, and we're going to define a local date and time field and a date and time field. So appointment, local date and time, appointment, date and time. And this is just to illustrate what all this looks like. And then when we get into it, we will examine what what forms and listings are automatically generated when we put in that entity. So, and that's always a great concept. Take a look at what our auto-generated stuff does, so you can figure out perhaps what you want to do. And then we've got a new feature in the date and time picker, the ability to manually input the date rather than having to pick it off the calendar. You can just type it in. So that's a cool feature. We'll show how to activate that. And then we're going to build a form that shows just how simple that we've made it, both with entity actions and with SQL actions. So that's the whole plan for today. And so we'll start at the start. This is going to be building a new entity. So the new entity is going to be LCC 85. And all of you who've been here before, you know I'm a big fan of copy and paste. So we'll get started. I've created a page for this. It's called this is on my test instance. It's called 85 date and time. That's the page. And so we're going to go into the configuration, and we're going to create an entity. So entities, new entity, and this is the Café namespace. We'll put it there. So we'll select that. And so the name of what we're doing is an LCC 85 appointment, and the plural of that is LCC 85 appointments. We are going to display this in the menu, and we're going to put it in our low-code cafe number 85. That's where this the forms that it builds for us, forms and listings, are going to be placed. And so now we move on to the properties. We're going to have three properties. This is the name, and that's going to be our display name as well, the hyperlinked name. The other one, and again, copy and pasting. So we're going to have an appointment, date and time, and it's going to be defined as a local date and time. And then we're going to have a date and time, the appointment expressed as a date and time. You would pick one of these, but I'm going to pick both just to illustrate what we're doing here. So this is the date and time type. As we do this, I'm going to make, let's see, we'll make them at least, we'll make it sortable. So this is going to give us the name of what this appointment is, and then we're going to do it in two different ways. We're going to set the appointment date and time in two different ways, but again, just to illustrate. And I'm going to pick that all users can view all entries. That way you'll be able to take a look at this in your local time if you want to. And so we'll save that. So it's generated some forms for us. And so here's the entity here, LCC 85 appointment, and I'm going to open that so that we can see it. So here we are, we have our form that's been generated. Let's see what happens. So we're going to do, just to illustrate, low-code cafe is going to be, that happens today at 10 a.m. my time. So I've got that entered here, and I'm just going to, in a local date and time, I'm going to just repeat that again, this is just for illustration, 10 a.m. And so we see that the Low Code Cafe happens at on March 23rd, 10 a.m. Same. So very simple. What you see is what you get. We can edit this. We could change the dates but so we have an edit form, we have a listing, it's showing us the time, the way we enter it. And just for you that are interested in it, you're welcome to bring that up. For example, on your device, you could see, depending on where you are, you'll see a different time. You should see this in your local time. So next step is we've got our properties. We've taken a look at the form and listing that got generated. Let's take a look at this new feature, this manual input. So let's figure out where we are here. I got to close stuff that I'm not using. So if we were to look at the listing, I'm just going to show you quickly the default. When we display the time, we can see that it's converting it to user time. It happens for both the LDT version and the DT version. It's showing it in user time. So that's why, and that's the default that we provide. It's showing it in wherever you are. If we look at the form, we can see that the field is called a date and time picker, and one of the properties it has is allow input. So we're just going to check allow input, and then we're going to do that same thing with the appointment date and time and allow input. Save. And some of you don't know this button here is kind of the close and refresh. This is close and refresh. So this is just that'll save you one click there. So now when we edit this form, if we wanted to, let's do a new one. This is fine. So just the point now is that you can type a date, and so I'm just going to completely type a completely different. We'll just do tomorrow. Just 3/24 10 p.m. So if somebody is, that this capability is available in our date and time as well. So if you just want your users to be able to type dates and not to go to any special effort, that is that's a nice new feature. And it also supports copying and pasting. So that's a nice time saver if that's appropriate in your case. And so we'll save this, and now it's showing tomorrow's date. We'll be fooling with these dates as we go. So that's the manual input. We default it to off currently, but you can very simply, as you just saw, turn it to on. So now the more detailed part of what we're going to do, show you, we'll build a form that reads and writes using these entity actions first. So if we were to go into edit mode here and add a new form, we'll just, and this is for those of you that the automatic generated forms that we generated are not what you're intending to use. What you want to use, so you can, you're going to go manual. Here's the way to do this. I'm putting it on the same form, just on the same page, just for convenience, but for this demonstration, keep everything all in one place. But you would probably have it be on a separate page. So we have a form, and we're going to, it's not configured, so we'll manage it here and start out as a blank form. And I'm going to put 3 things on here. So the first thing I'm going to do is put a text field, a static text field, to remind us what we're looking at. This is just telling us where we are so we don't get lost, because in a little while we're going to do a SQL version. So now we'll add the fields that we're going to need. So this is a text field, and I hate this bug, so we'll do it up here, a text field, which is going to be just a simple text box that is the name that's coming off of the record. And so we'll populate that in a little bit. And then the next one we're going to want to do is a date and time. Notice we have date and time picker. That's the new one. This is the deprecated one. So this is going to be the appointment. And this is going to be our date and time. Because we've said date and time, it's automatically going to prompt for date and time, and it's going to be in a it's got a default format. We're not going to have to do a bunch of configuration here, but you can. And I'm going to allow input here, and that's really all I'm going to pick at this point. So we're going to pick, that's the appointment, and the last thing we're going to let's go that far. Those are the three things that we're going to have on the screen. So we will go back and take a look at that. So here's our static text. We have a place for name. We have a place for appointment. So now we need to read the information. We're going to just focus on record ID 1. Obviously, your applications are going to be more complex than that, but we're just going to keep it simple and just focus on number 1. So I'm going to open the design for this form, a new tab. In our events, on a pre-init, this is a great place to look for, to read records and get the data that your form needs. So we're going to look for the LCC. We want to read an LCC 85 appointment. You can see I named I've got some other ones similar, so it's a little hard to see, but the read 85, read our entity. The one that we want is number 1, and we're going to output that as an output token. If this is something that we'll be able to read, appointment entity, just be very clear that it's coming from entity. And so this gets our data in from record 1. All the fields are available. So we can go to our fields and initialize them. The name is going to be, get an initial value of appointment entity : name. So it's going to take what we just read and display it. And in the same way, we'll come on down here to the appointment, and we want this to be equal to initial value of and I'm just going to pick one of these fields. It doesn't matter which one, but this field that we've defined, appointment LDT, is how we're going to initialize it. And it's just very simply, we point to it, and it's going to go get the right value. So we save that. So now let's take a look at what we have. We refresh the screen. This is initialized with low-code Café, the name, and it's initialized with the appointment, the date and time field. And so everything is all in alignment. We very easily got our data just by asking for it out of the database. So what if we want to be able to update that? Well, in the entity model, we're going to have to do 2 things. We'll have to have a button that does it, and then we'll partially update this back. So we will add a button that's going to be save. And again, the name, the ID of this field is appointment, so we'll grab that. And in the actions, the on-click handler, we will add that we want to partially update the LCC 85 appointment. The ID that we're working with is 1. Again, we're keeping that very simple, and we want to update our LDT to appointment, and we're going to keep these all aligned. We're going to update appointment date and time to the same value. So both of our fields are going to be updated to whatever we pick out here. And so we'll save that. So now let's take a look at what we have. If we want to fix this back to what it really should be, which is today at 10 a.m., we can do that and then hit save, and then watch what happens down here when this form refreshes the page. So 3:23, 10 a.m., 3:23, 10 a.m. All this is happening very simple. The update happened just as we expected to both fields. Let's take a look a little bit behind the scenes. If we were to go to the SQL console and take a look at, here's our field here, LCC 85 appointment. I'm going to click it so it copies that to my clipboard. So we're going to select that and run the query. Let's see what we have. We've got two fields. The local date and time is expressed as 10 o'clock in the central time zone, -5 hours. The date and time is expressed as 1500 hours. This is just a universal time and can be converted to anywhere as you need it to. Both of these can be converted anywhere as you need it to, but this one's retaining the idea that it came from, it's local to the -5 time zone. All right, raise your hand if you're asleep. So this is what it looks like in front of the, on your database. Then we've, we see what it looks like in the database, what it looks like on the front end, and how easy it is to do. Probably what would be interesting and useful next, we could actually do the same thing with SQL. And I want to make sure I leave Bogdan enough time to talk, but we may come back and do it with SQL as well. But if we're, I want to point out just some of the features. If we go into this listing that I was talking about before, and we were to express this and say, instead of we want to see it in user time, we want to see it in portal time, we can save it and take a look at it. And now we're going to see that, well, it didn't do anything because this portal is in the current time zone, so nothing changed. But if we, wrong one, we go into the listing and change it to be without conversion, we're going to see it in universal coordinated time. And so now it's showing it in 3 p.m. So our defaults are to keep it easy. You can just work with the fields as you want to. And they're going to show in user time. It gets more complex if you want to build a worldwide application and you need to think about these things. But in general, if you want to do an application that asks for time, you can just use the fields as I've shown. They're not. And for those of you, I suppose, who are new to our products, this was more complex, and we've tried to make it dirt simple, easy. There's going to be more on this as we go along, but at least that's the introduction to date and time. And so I'll wrap up with this. There's a promo here for Campfire. Low Code Campfire is a more interactive. We discuss this stuff that happens this same hour, 10 a.m. Central. And lastly, the links for this episode, I'm just going to copy and put these on the clipboard so that you guys can see them and have them to work with. But we encourage you to, with this release, we've been talking about features that are being removed, opportunity to register in advance for Low Code Campfire. You can see all our old recordings for this event on Clinton YouTube channel. And we invite you to participate in the community portal. So with that, Bogdan, I will leave the rest half hour to you. And
thanks, Dave.
Features. Yep.
Thanks for showcasing the new date and time capabilities. And yes, that was the intent, to simplify it a lot. There's a couple more things that happened behind the scenes, and I will cover them while we go through this presentation. So does my screen show all right?
Yes.
Cool. Cool. So besides the data picker, of course, the major thing with this release was fully transitioning to Bootstrap 5 as the default UI. Here I have just a standard entity page that I generated before this meeting, showing the look and feel of it, the new listing, the new form. So, I mean, in terms of functionality, they work very closely to how the Bootstrap 3 was working, but of course, looks much nicer, much cleaner. It's a modern library, easier to theme, easier to extend. So we'll dig in deeper to also show some new capabilities that we've added along with this Bootstrap 5 migration. Cool. So I will start here in the administration screen. I think some things that might look simple, but I think they are a big step forward for us. Is for example, some of these pages we've rewritten them to also use the new components that we have before they were custom coded. So, for example, the user page, this has turned, in fact, to a listing and a form Bootstrap 5. So Patrick did most of this work, and a really big shout out goes to him. But what this allows now to do, of course, since this is now a page that is customizable, of course, you can go behind the scenes, look at how it was implemented, or clone it and implement your own user management starting from this. And now it will also be easier to extend, and Patrick already did that with adding more capabilities, like seeing more of the details in here, or even this impersonation feature, which is very cool to especially for debug purposes or testing purposes, to see how other users see the content, see the system. So it creates a link that when you access it, you log in as this user. And so on. Other settings are available here. We did the same with pages, migrating it to Bootstrap 5. This was already built with our products, but now it's migrated fully to Bootstrap 5. And this is a pattern that we'll continue doing with many of the screens here, to try to leverage our products more and more, because that also makes our job easier to customize them, to extend them, but also serves as good starting point if you ever need to extend these capabilities with other functionalities that are specific to you. So these are some big changes here in the admin screens. Beside that, in the entities, right now we have a small glitch, but basically right now we have an option here to switch Bootstrap 3 or Bootstrap 5 when you create a new entity, and now the default is Bootstrap 5, and the default will be Bootstrap 5 also with the form and the listings. You notice when Dale added a new form earlier, he didn't have to say it's Bootstrap 5 because he defaulted to Bootstrap 5. So now Bootstrap 5 is the default. Continuing on the topic that Dale presented, we added a couple, actually a new property here for the time. So we added time UTC as well. And this is actually what the previous version, what the time property did. It did the conversion to and from UTC. So in database it's always UTC, but when the user sees it, of course, it's in the user time zone. But we realize that sometimes a time needs to be a time, regardless of who's seeing it from which location. So now we also have a field that is called just time, which just stores the time as it is. It doesn't do any time zone conversions. Cool. So all of this will be reflected in the forms and the listings that are generated. So maybe let's continue adding also some date property here. And maybe this one I will make time UTC so you can see it as well. And I will put a, let's say, joined date to also show you a bit the date field that they didn't manage to show. So I think on the backend side of it, these are like the major changes, except I think this Dale already mentioned this. You'll also see a button to upgrade the DNN version, the underlying DNN version, but you have to install a hotfix first because 120 requires DNN 9.9, and we made it easier to also upgrade that with a one-click, so that that creates a smoother, let's say, upgrade experience. And just as a heads up, in the future, we have the plans to bind the two. So to not be able to update one without the other, to update everything at once, because that, of course, will create the greatest compatibility, as we don't have to support any version to any version.
And if I can, I just want to mention, I ran this DNN upgrade earlier this week, and it ran flawlessly. It was a very cool feature. And so just to kind of outline what you're going to have to do, you basically, anybody on 119, you'll want to take all the hot fixes, and then you'll have this ability to upgrade DNN. And you do have to, when you click it, you'll see the typical DNN login to host, and click the button and it'll accomplish the login, and come right back, and then you can install 120. So it's very cool.
Cool. So now let's get back to this page. So I already created this customer page. We just added a couple of new properties. So I want to show you a bit the backend of the form and the listing and the new settings that we have here, because this in 120, these are mainly the main UI components that suffered a lot of changes. I mean, on the front end, a complete rewrite. Cool. So first of all, let's start with the form. So of course now we have this time field here and the join date, which is just a date. There is no time. Before doing any work with them, let's look at their settings. So one of the first things that you'll notice is that now, and let me show it like this, now we have different fields for the date and time, just for a date or just for a time, right? So the one that you saw earlier, Dale was showing, was the date and time picker. And now what I added here is a time field and a date field. No. So for example, for the time field, it was pre-configured by the entity builder for me, of course. And this setting is basically what makes that time be a UTC. What this setting does is it tells convert this to the user time zone, and when the user submits the form, convert it back to the UTC. Other things that we did for all the date picker fields, we made this format selector. So before it was just a text area. So now you can switch for available formats. For time, we have just two without the ability to add custom ones. But for the dates, and I will move to the date right now. For the dates, of course, we have more different formats with the possibility to go expression mode and do your own date format using the specification provided here. But most of the time, we expect that one of these will be enough. So let me also switch input, because yes, I think that's a very, very, very cool feature. And let's also look a bit at them on the front end, how they behave. So with the form, sorry, with the form. Let's maybe add a new entry. So now you can write the time like Dale was doing earlier. So I'm just writing 2 p.m. and you see it's already figuring out. Of course, when we have a glitch here. So when I click out, it formats it based on the date format. But otherwise, I can put the date in any format, right? Even like if I put it in the 24 hours, it figures out that it's 4 p.m. And same with dates, like Dale showed. It does a good job at supporting various formats as well. So, for example, I could do ISO here as well. So it will still work. But when I focus out, it converts it to, of course, the format assigned to this date and time. Going back to the form, like I mentioned, in the templates, now the form start with Bootstrap 5 template, but the previous templates are also available. So there are some capabilities that will have to be migrated manually, as we'll outline in the release notes, some breaking changes that we announced. So if you're not ready yet to transition, you can still use these two older templates and have the same capability as before. Just wanted to point that out.
And people who are upgrading, it's going to show as Bootstrap 3 obsolete until they flip them.
Yep.
It will not automatically flip them on an existing application.
Exactly. Yeah. So yeah, transition will have to be done manually by changing this setting page by page, and of course doing some testing and some migration for each if needed.
And if you missed that, that was last week's episode of Low Code Cafe number 84, so you can go look at that.
So now let's move on to the listing, which listing suffered also a complete rewrite. So now it's Bootstrap 5, it's Angular, and also we got the chance to add the new capabilities, quite a few nice capabilities in it. Maybe the first one that's very visible up front is the ability to apply multi-filters to the same column. So I can filter by this tool, and now I have both. Of course, I have just 2 records, so it doesn't make a lot of sense to do it like that. But now this ability to filter by multiple value, it's pretty cool. And I mean, maybe you already noticed it, that it's very, very, very fast. So that was a big reason why we also did this revamp. The technology we are on grew old, grew complex. So now both with the form and the listing, you'll notice it's very, 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 very fast. Okay, so let's move to the listing setting and analyze some of the new capabilities that we've added in. So let's start with this thing that we call should be around here, display title. So this is a new setting that we added to embed the module title inside the module. Why is this important? Why is this nice? Because it saves space, right? So if we put the title here, it can be aligned with the buttons instead of being like a separate title on the page. So it looks more compact, more clean. But of course, you can always go and take it out, in which case we'll have no title and we'll rely on whatever the page wants to display for us. Okay, so that is one of the first functionality. The next one, we've showcased even in 119 that we have many different ways to show details right now. And what we did in 120, we took that further. We also added back the inline detail mode. So let's go and create some detail buttons. Let's say show details. Okay, and now we add some actions, detail, and notice there are two of them now. So one is the custom detail view, and one is called detail view. The one that we had up until now is this one. So we renamed it. This one basically you are in charge of doing the details. This is record, and let's put let's put the name, the P name, I think. Let's check. No, just the name. Okay. So this is the record for name. So this is how you do previously until now, but of course now we have some new settings. So you can still put it in line, but now the default is the right sidebar, right? So I will leave it as the right sidebar, and of course we can put maybe an ID in the title bar followed by a name, and we look at that in a bit. Save and refresh. So now we have this, where is it? What did I do? Let's see. Button, oh, I put it as a root button. My bad. Let's try again, but this time I will do something different so it doesn't feel like I did it twice. This time maybe we don't show the title. Maybe we do it with an icon, because this takes us to another change that we did. So glyph icons will be removed in 120. And then now we added font awesome, and we also added this speaker, right? So you don't have necessarily to type it. You can find it in this list. Of course, it's a big list, so probably use search for things anyways. So this adds the icon for us, so we'll make it as an icon button. And again, please allow me to do the detail view. But this time, maybe I will use the new one, not the custom one, but this called just detail view. And what this does, notice there is no text area. This does it automatically for me. So let's put again the ID and the name of the person that I'm opening. And that's it. The rest, of course, I can configure it where it appears, but the rest is automatically generated for me. So let's refresh, and now notice I have this icon here. I click it and I get the details in the right sidebar, and all the fields in the entity will be here. Of course, there's other things that I can do here. I can move some of the columns to be displayed in the sidebar. So let's say this join date maybe is not such important, so I can tick this detail view only. No. So when I do this, the field disappears from the main listing, so I can use the more space here, but it will be available, of course, in the detail view. And since we've implemented this detail view, we also went further with it. So, for example, we had this confirmation buttons. When you click buttons to confirm, and the confirmation would go, are you really sure you want to do this? And click yes or no. One of the problems with that was of course, it was covering the content. You'll no longer see the record that you're deleting. So now we are using that sidebar. So if I click delete, the same sidebar with all the settings appears, but now I have the confirmation here. Right? So I can click no, it closes, or let's delete John Doe. I click yes, it gets deleted. So that's how we implement confirmations right now. And you don't have to do anything. You don't have to manually add the sidebar for that. The sidebar is used implicitly with this confirmation feature. You can, of course, still modify the message and the buttons similar as you do before. They are in button settings under ask for confirmation.
You're looking for delete, right?
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah, same setting. Okay, so that's a bit about all the details and the confirmation. Another big piece is, of course, the views, right? So Right now, you'll notice that in the listing module, there is no Bootstrap 3 or Bootstrap 5 setting because that is defined by the views you select. The legacy views is, of course, what we had up until now. And you'll notice we moved a lot of settings here that were usually living under settings. They are here because they are specific just to these templates, this legacy template. The default, as you've seen, it starts with this table template. And some of the settings we've also moved here. Like if you remember, we used to have on the buttons, and I think it still happens. So if I go to the legacy view, oh no, oh, they moved here. Okay, the button position moved here, but they used to live directly on the buttons. So now they are settings of the view. Each view has its own settings because for some it makes sense to have paginations, for example. For the calendar, it doesn't make sense to have pagination. It's always a time interval. Or for cards, the pagination might mean how many rows or how many columns. No? So each will have its specific settings. Of course, the order we put here, and we can start playing with all the other views as well. The order you put here is the order they appear in. Some views require fields, like the calendar would always require a date field, otherwise it will not be able to render it in a calendar. So again, we can use of course, the join date, or we can also, of course, it needs to be one column that's added here. So we still have other fields like the created date of the record. I can add this, and now I'm able to, under the views, I'm able to use that as well. The create date. Oh, I think it requires a refresh. Never mind. I'll use the join date. Same with this title. This defines what appears on the calendar. So I will maybe pick the name. So that's it. But for the cards, I have many other special fields, and I think I demoed this in greater length with the last release. So I'll not spend a lot of time on it. I will just maybe select a couple of things here so we don't have an empty one. So let's look a bit of at how it looks. So now, of course, the views can be changed from here. The car view, of course, uses car view. This uses CSS grid behind the scenes, which is modern and scales very nice. If you've got to play with the car view in Bootstrap 3, you know it was always a hurdle to get all the cars to look the same size. With CSS grid, that happens magically, and it's easy. So this is of course the card view. Because I selected an ID, it will appear here. I selected the title, it appears here. And similar with the calendar view, but maybe before that, let's edit this and give it a join date so we can see it. Let's give it a join date for today. And now let's move to the calendar view, and we can see, oh, I selected 21, never mind. So it's here, you can click on it. And again, we use this sidebar detail view to see all the details. In this case, since the name already has a link on it, so this formatting link, which we have all the views. So you see here it's a link, and here it's a link. Because we have this, of course, it also gets rendered in the calendar. So if you click inside it, it goes to the link, which is the detail page. Actually, it does both, so it went to the detail page. So now, depending on your requirements, you might want to make this not filled with a link and just open the details, or have a link and redirect to a page. So these are some of the major highlights. There are some other minor, let's say, goodies that we have. So, for example, let's get this to show more columns. Because you'll notice when things get crowded. So let's turn this back on all to show on all fields, and maybe let's add a couple more. So we have more data in. We'll make it really squeezed. Yeah. So I think maybe I'm better off doing something like resizing this window. Okay, so now notice that, for example, some of this content goes on 2 rows. So let's pick the name. Let's say that I don't want the name to go on 2 rows. So we have a new formatter for that. I'll go on the name field. Of course, maybe name field is not not the form builder. I want it to go in the listing. Maybe the name fielder is not the right example because it already has a formatter, but we have this no text wrap formatter right now. So if I save this, basically it will prevent that field going on 2 rows. So now it started scaling in other places, but I can ensure sometimes a text, it doesn't make sense to split it. It changes the meaning or just looks poor. And of course, all of this is responsive. We want to add more responsive capabilities. So let's look a bit at the responsive side of it. Of course, the listing, you have to make responsive by selecting which fields are visible or, sorry, something happened here. Yep. So of course, the listing is difficult to scale. You have to define which columns are visible on which devices. So then maybe you only show 2 on mobile and show a button to show the details here. That will be like a common practice. Whereas other views have this built in, like for example, the car view, is so much nicer to show on mobile, and the calendar view, it's more difficult to show on mobile. It will look something like this. And of course, you have to go maybe week or day to make sense of something. So in a nutshell, I think just 2 minutes left. In a nutshell, these are like some new capabilities we added along with revamping to Bootstrap 5. Right now, most of the fields have made it to Bootstrap 5, so the migration will be minimum. There are, of course, some fields like the date picker that if you use the obsolete date picker, there is no correspondent in Bootstrap 5, so you'll have to switch to the new date picker manually. Cool. Any questions?
Yeah, although I'm not sure I understand. Jim was asking about if the edit button in the detail view is to edit the form or the data.
Yeah, so this button is the same as this button. So all the buttons that you have on the row get transferred to the at the bottom of the detail view. Of course, I have this gear icon here, so I'm not sure if you can see the edit button, and there's the delete button here. So again, if I click delete, I will get into the same view with the confirmation. So the same buttons, except the detail, the one you just clicked, of course, all the buttons that you have here go to detail view as well, to the automatically generated one.
Very nice. All right. I think shown it well. Thanks for cleaning up and finishing talking about daytime that I didn't get to. And I'm sure there's an opportunity for us to all talk about this in the low code campfire coming up on Friday. So if you have questions or want to get interactive in this discussion, by all means, jump in on that.
Yep. And I think on Friday, we'll also launch the beta, hopefully. So then it will be a good time to kick off things. Okay, everyone.
So great. With that, thank you for your presentation, and thanks everyone for showing up to Low Code Cafe for this Wednesday, and we look forward to seeing you again next week.
Thanks everyone for being here. Bye.